How did this picture start? I know you've written other films with Billy Bob Thornton before. The inception of this film, is it something he came to you with, something you guys created together? Let's talk about the beginning of the process.
Yeah, about 3 years ago, Billy decided he wanted to direct another movie. He'd been kind of on a 10-year-long hiatus after All the Pretty Horses, which was kind of a bad experience for him. But he was ready to jump back on the horse, and he said he had this idea about a British family coming to visit a Southern family in the 60s. And that was the idea. And originally we saw it as this sort of like zany comedy. But the more we got into it, we started thinking, well, it's the 60s, so it should be about Vietnam. And wait a second, I mean, if Billy is around 50, that means he probably would have been in World War II. And we always wanted Duvall to play everyone's father. It's like, well, Duvall he could have been in World War I. And the third generation could be in Vietnam. And, originally the idea had nothing to do with war. It just sort of developed along the way.
And how long did it take you guys to write this?
It took us about 3.5 months.
And as far as when you have co-writers, how does that work with the two of you? Do you guys sit down together to write something? Do you write some and bring it to him? Does he write some and bring it to you? How does the process work for you?
Yeah, it's kind of more the latter. We talk out the story in general terms, and we kind of have a rough beginning, a middle, and an end. And then we'll start off, okay, let's start writing some scenes. So we talk out the scenes in more detail, and then he'll go away and write his scenes, and I'll go away and write my scenes. And then we'll exchange scenes and rewrite each other's scenes. And we usually, it's always like we always know who should write what scene. I mean, Billy's better at certain stuff than I am and vice versa. And very roughly in Jayne Mansfield'S Car, Billy tended to do more of the Caldwell stuff, the Alabama family. And I tended to do more of the English family, the Bedfords.
Who wrote the wanking scene?
Oh, Billy, of course. But I will take credit for Charge the Light Brigade. Because Billy said he had this idea where he wanks off or whatever. I've embarrassed even talking about this, but in front of the English girl when she's reciting something, and she said, well, what could she recite? I said, well, what about Charge the Light Brigade? He said, wow, it's great. So it happened in like 10 seconds.
Ladies, once again, thank you for coming out tonight. Shawnee, I haven't seen you this buttoned up in something for a long time.
And in that company, I just auditioned, and Billy's just the sweetest human on the planet, I think. And he says, gosh, I know, you don't say a lot, but you're in a lot, and I don't want you to be up there and be bored and, or feel like you don't have enough to do. I said, Billy, I'll make you coffee. What do I have to pay you to be up there in this company doing whatever, just listening? And he says, really? It's like so humble. So I still can't believe it.
Did you like having the hairstyle in this film?
I did. The wig really made. She was really buttoned up, wasn't she?
Did you guys get that off Betty Crocker? Well, no, Betty Crocker. Wasn't it that?
I love when she calls me Sister Vicky.
I think that was an ad-lib. Remember someone asked us if we ad-lib maybe that one ad-lib in the whole movie. But didn't you guys get that idea from the Betty Crocker? Or am I just making that up?
I don't know. Billy had all his favorite people on the crew, and his hair and makeup ladies were...
Our hairstylist was from Alabama and grew up in the 60s, so it was pretty perfect.
Now, yeah. Katherine, what's it like to be married to Ron White?
I wouldn't know.
Well,
actually, this is the second time that Ron has played a love interest of mine of sorts. Yeah, I think the first time was in a series by Linda Bloodworth Thomason for HBO that never aired called 12 Miles of Bad Road, and he was a suitor of mine. And it was one of his first acting things. And so I was really proud of him. As silly as that sounds, he's such an accomplished entertainer. But it's really nice to see him in a role like this, just stealing the scene and being so wonderful.
Now,
he's a good buddy of ours.
Katherine, as far as working with Billy Bob as a director, first off, how was it? How was he as a director?
He was great. I think it was all of our favorite movie experience. Even Duvall said at the end of the movie, he told us all that it was his favorite time on a movie in 20 years. I look at the movie, I almost want to cry. I feel like I'm watching my home movies of my greatest summer camp ever going by. But Billy, the interesting thing about Billy is he has this I call it a very soft hand and a very heavy hand, where in one way he hires who he thinks is perfect for the role, like just that intrinsically the person is just right. They almost can't make a bad move. He just feels like they're them. And then on the other hand, he tells you exactly where you're going to go, and you just say the words and go where he says to go. So there's no rehearsal. We're not going to sort it out. He's very visual. That's why I think the movie is so beautiful. It looks like a Vermeer painting or something, like some wacky Southern Gothic Vermeer or something. But I think he really has the frame in mind before you ever get there, and he wants it to look like what he wants it to look like. And his movies are so beautiful. How can you argue? He's just this great photographer. So there's no discussion about that. And if you want to do something different, you should have talked to him about it quite a while ago. In fact, that one scene where I'm smoking the cigarette with Duvall, the way that it was lit when I got there, and there's no rehearsal. You just show up and he turns on the camera. And the way that so it was lit, when I got there, I kind of felt like I had to stand like right over Duvall, and it didn't feel right. It felt like I was crowding him, and it was so sensitive. And I said, "Oh, Billy, can I just lean against the wall?" And he said, "Well, that's a great idea, but you won't be in the movie." But he got what I was saying, so he was compassionate, and he let me. They moved some of that equipment over so I could lean on the equipment instead.
I know you guys always have great questions as well, so if you have a question, just go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll stay here all night long to answer every single one of them. Yeah, thank you, thank you. Any questions from the crowd? We're going to go right over here first. Yes.
The main reason for coming to see Jayne Mansfield'S Car was because I did enjoy All the Pretty Horses so much. Can you say why it was such a disappointment for him? I mean, I thought it was a very, very good story.
Oh.
And I love this movie too.
Oh, thank you. Well, you haven't really seen All the Pretty Horses. You haven't seen Billy's vision. Billy's Cut was about 2 hours and 45 minutes, and the one you've seen is about, I don't know, an hour 55. And he just got drastically cut by Harvey Weinstein, and you know, it was taken out of Billy's hands. You know, like let's see, Orson Welles. You know, you haven't seen the Magnificent Ambersons the way Orson Welles did it, because that was drastically recut. And you know, I think what you've seen is a good movie. I think Billy made a great movie, and it broke his heart. That's the reason he didn't direct for about 10 years. And but I'm glad you liked it. I mean, it's still good, but hopefully he'll have his vision out on DVD one of these days. It's been talked about.
That'd be great.
And this film, though, not the same experience. This is the picture that you guys both had in mind from the beginning?
Yes. This is Billy's Cut. The producers were great. It was actually produced by a Russian company. We couldn't get financing in America for this. Even with these people, even with Billy and Robert Duvall, no American company would finance it. And so we lucked into these rich Russian guys. And they found out about it because Billy was shooting some movie and doing publicity, and then he was talking about this script that he and I had written, and he was saying, you know, I can't get this thing financed. And one of the Russian guys read it and loved it, and then we had a movie. So that was great. So, but in terms of well, I'll get a little bit more particular with you. It was Billy had final cut up to 2 hours and 10 minutes. So anything beyond that, he would have lost final cut. We actually had a 2 hour and 18-minute cut that both of us really liked a lot. And you know, but that wasn't gonna work. So Billy started cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting, and now it's a little bit over 2 hours. There's some really good stuff that's not in the movie anymore. I mean, there's some really good stuff with Donna and Philip that didn't make an end. I mean, their romance, or whatever you want to call it, was it was fuller, and there was more to it. And there was one scene, it broke my heart, and it broke Ray Stevenson's heart, because I talked to him about it. Ray Stevenson played Philip. You know, the scene with Philip and Donna in bed, and then Ray gets all upset, then he goes to the window and starts to smoke. Well, Philip tells Donna about his war experiences, and his war experiences were as horrific as Billy's were. And it was a great monologue, and Ray did a great job, and it's not in the movie anymore. I hope it's going to be. I hope it's going to be like a 2-hour, 18-minute DVD one of these days.
Yes.
Hi, I'm the Palm Springs movie gal. I love the dynamics between father and son, and there's so many rich variations of father and son experiences on the film. Did you draw from your personal relationships, or did Billy Bob draw from any personal relationships as far as those relationships?
Yeah, the Duval character was really based on Billy's dad. I mean, Billy's dad was a closed-off kind of a guy who would take Billy and his brothers to see car wrecks. And really, I mean, so all that stuff is real, you know. And
that was a very dangerous road, by the way. I just want to point that out. Someone should do something about that road in this picture.
It is. And then, you know, my dad was kind of the same way too. I mean, I think a lot of dads are that way. They're just really these closed off macho guys, you know, and they don't, you know, you saw how when Kevin Bacon tried to hug Duvall, you know, in front of the funeral home, you know, Duvall wouldn't hug him back, you know, and I mean, my dad never hugged me. I mean, that's just the way it was, you know. So yeah, it was based on a lot of real stuff. And it's a funny thing because, you know, Billy and I grew up together, and you know, we grew up on the same block, and our mothers were best friends, and our dads weren't. You know, they were friends. They were best friends, but they died the same year. But Billy's dad was only, I think, 43 years old when he died. He died of mesothelioma, which he probably got in the Navy, because he was in the Navy in the Korean War, probably exposed to asbestos. And it was 1974, and my father died that same year of a stroke. And they're buried in the Malvern Cemetery, like within 10 feet of each other. So it's just kind of odd and weird, you know. So.
Shawnee, most of the crew on this, or at least most of the cast, is male. For someone like you, what's it like to be on a set with so much testosterone, you know, being around?
I like testosterone.
Was it a good set?
I do. It was the best set. It was like, you know, you wept when it was done because you didn't want it to end. You knew it was the best movie-making experience you were ever going to have, and you were lucky to have it.
More questions from the crowd. We'll go right over here. Yes.
You know, contrasting the female characters to the male, I like the freedom and the free spirit of the female characters. Their strength was so different. The males were so guarded with everything they said. How did you feel about the characters that you played?
Yeah. You know, Billy told me at the beginning of the movie that he felt that the way that Donna had succeeded with all of those strong males was to become the best. And you have to think that, you know, the former Miss Alabama married, was it George Wallace that she married? Like the 1951 Miss Alabama became Miss America and married George Wallace or something. So I don't know if I have that right. But she was sort of became very famous. And so I'm thinking that Donna was probably the year before, or the year after. And so it must have been a huge, huge deal to me, Miss Alabama back then. And, you know, I started thinking, you know, in the story, Donna lives in Atlanta with Neil, and she's probably a little bit of a hick in Atlanta. But back there, you know, in the hometown, she's got to be the queen of that town. And Billy said something really interesting. He said, and I said, you know, and I bet she did this, and I bet she was a cheerleader and homecoming queen and all this stuff, you know. And he said, and everybody liked her. And I thought, wow, because so often that person isn't such a nice person. I thought, and everybody liked her, and it gave me such a great thrust for the whole experience, you know, and it was great. But I also based, oddly, some of it just from my own on Lucas Black's character in Sling Blade, the boy. I felt there was something in the writing of my character that reminded me of that character and how he had no shame, that he wore his self on his sleeve completely, and I loved that about him, and I wanted to bring that to Donna.
I saw plenty of hands earlier. You guys can go. There you go. Let's go right over here. Yes.
Just a little, it's not a critique, but I was thinking when they drove off in the car, it was going to be the end of the film. And it seemed to be a more satisfactory stopping point in going back again to Kevin Bacon and his son.
How many people thought when the car was driving off that was the end of the movie? Just raise your hand. Everybody, literally everybody. Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you a secret. And I've actually, I don't think Billy's ever talked about this. I've been reading interviews he's been doing. He's never talked about it. And I've never talked about it, but I'm going to talk now about it. But the original ending was that. It was them driving off into the sunset, literally. And the scene with Carol and Mickey came, it was 2 or 3, it wasn't the end of the movie, it was 2 or 3 scenes before that. And, you know, Billy called me up during the editing process one night and says, so I got this kind of crazy idea. I don't know if we should do it or not. It has to do with the ending. And I said, so you want the movie to end with Kevin and his son, don't you? I mean, because as soon as he said that, I knew what he was talking about. And I said, man, that's great. But, you know, let's do it. And, you know, it's an ending that's a lot of people aren't gonna like, because it's not a happy ending. It's a downer ending. If you look, when I came up here, I was a little embarrassed because I was wiping my nose because I was crying at the end. I mean, I've seen the end, you know, a million times, and it still kills me. And that push in on Kevin Bacon's face, I mean, to me it's devastating, because what he's seeing, obviously, is he's seeing his son going off into the horrors of war, the same sort of horrors that he experienced in World War II. And it's just, you know, the movie may not have started off to have anything to do with war. It ended up being all about war. You know, even though you don't get off this ranch that these people, you know, live in Alabama. And it just felt to us like that was the most honest ending.
Yes, right up here.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because to me, this movie is an anti-war movie. And I'm wondering if perhaps that's why you had trouble getting it funded. What was it? Why do you think you had trouble?
Can you guys repeat the question?
Yeah, the question was, with it being an anti-war movie, would that be an issue with getting funding in the States, at least?
You know, I don't think so. I mean, you know, Hollywood tends to be a fairly liberal town, and I don't think that was the case. But you know, you never really know, and I'm not sure why we had so much trouble. You know, it seemed to us like it was just like a, you know, good old family movie, a lot of funny stuff, and, you know, sexy stuff, and, you know, heavy duty stuff, and anti-war stuff, and, you know, we couldn't understand why. Well, it's not quite true. We couldn't get it financed. Billy had a budget done, and the budget came in at $12 million, and we kept getting we had several offers to do it at $6 million. $6 million, 2 years ago, $6 million seemed to be as much as you could raise for an independent movie of this sort. That they felt that the business model made sense, you know. And Billy didn't want to do it for that because he thought he couldn't. And so that's when we lucked into the Russians.
How did the title come about?
Billy and I both actually saw Jayne Mansfield'S Car. We grew up in Malvern, Arkansas. In the early 70s, they brought it to town. And it was exactly like it is in the movie. It was in this trailer. It was just outside of town. It was on the parking lot of, you know, this sort of discount dollar store, you know, and then all the local yokels like Billy and me, you know, we paid our quarter, and then we walked up these metal stairs and into a trailer, and there was the death car. And there was Jayne Mansfield. There was a mannequin's head, you know, very good taste, in the back seat. So it really happened. And so the funny thing is, Billy and I can't remember if we were together when we did it or if we did it separately. Because I've actually read some interviews. Billy said that he and his dad went, and see, I thought he and I went, but we both saw it. We might have seen it independently. It always stuck with us, and we would talk about it from time to time. It's like, do you remember when they brought Jayne Mansfield'S Car to Malvern? I mean, how weird was that, you know? And about the same time, we were coming up with this British story. You know, Billy's a very talented musician and songwriter. Billy had written a song about, excuse me, about Jayne Mansfield'S Car, and he said, well, why don't we use Jayne Mansfield'S Car in the movie? That could be like a really cool scene, and then we could call the movie Jayne Mansfield'S Car. And so that's how it happened. It's not like, you know, it's not like we're these profound people that, you know, pace the floor and, you know, agonize. It's tough. Just like, well, why don't we do this or why don't we do that? So that's how that came about.
Now, ladies, is it odd as an actress when, you know, you're living today with your cell phones and HD TVs and everything, to go to work every day and have it be a period piece, to be living in this era? Is that odd to kind of step out of, you know, today's world and back 30, 40 years? Shawnee?
I love the confines of that, and it's kind of like the confines of the family, you know, which is sad that there's no more families anymore, because like the pressure of that is like the riches come, or like the diamond, you know, it just gets like roughed up and beat up. It was more distilled, working in, you know, the period and within the confines of the culture at that time. Especially for Vicky, you know, she was very much confined till the end when she laughed and her husband laughed and the floodgates opened and all those years were there. That's beautiful about loving somebody that long.
I just say, I mean, Shawnee did such an amazing part with the Vicky role. Because Billy and I always felt a little funny about that role because we felt it was a bit underwritten. Yeah, I'm a writer. I never talk, so I'm talking more in the last 10 minutes. I've talked all week. So
amazing.
So you probably only have like 8 or 10 lines in the whole movie, but you seem and Billy and I both marvel at what you did with that role. It was just really amazing.
I'm a big fan of behavior, which is why it's so fun working with Billy. Mm-hmm. When he starts that scene, shaking the, so there was, and I tend to, you know, you don't really get this opportunity a lot as an actress in 2013. Everyone's so busy talking, you know, but to me, like, people's behavior says so much about them, and I loved playing Vicky because I didn't say a lot. Like in life, I can't stop talking, but Vicky didn't say a lot. And so I put it in her behavior, the way she cleared the table. And Billy, I'm glad I went to him before several things before we filmed the scene. I said, Billy, I just had this idea, and it might be nothing, but I just want to tell you about it. He says, okay. And he put it like the hickey in my neck. That scene with the record player was totally different. And then you were on board with it too. You were the first one on board, weren't you? And I said, I don't want to be dressed. I want to be like my husband and I haven't left the bedroom. It's an interruption to us being together. And he was like, yeah,
And
make
after
it
you
bigger.
got all hot when after right through the glass. Can I ask Shawnee a question?
It is your night. You guys can do
Okay.
whatever you'd like.
I agree with Tom. I'm so glad you brought that up. I mean, that role is so full, and it's like, what the hell? So I have this theory, the more I see it, it's like that all of this stuff has to do with their sex life. I don't know. And it's like, is that why she's mad on the way to church? Why are you so ticked on the way to church? Is that it? I'm guessing.
The tension has been building. I haven't really had a successful marriage yet, but I have children for a long time. And we're together all the time, and I homeschool them, so we're together all the time. And there's a tension, that you wouldn't put up with in 2013. You don't have to put up with anything. You don't have to have tension when you order your coffee. You get it exactly how you want. And these two people they've really tried to do the right thing in life and raise the child, loving God and doing the right thing. And it's hard to do the right thing over and over and over. And this tension just slipped in between them, and it lasted for a long time.
Well, then what was going on when you got so hot and heavy after right through the glass?
You know what it was? And I just realized watching the movie tonight that there was this song, this Patty Griffith song, that I heard that when the character, this was before the wig solidified but this was the moment when I understood Vicky, and it was this story about repeating. It's called Chief, and people and their habits, and this chief who walks up and down the street, and then the bridge is this beautiful, it opens up, and she says, I wish that you could see me when I'm flying in my dreams, the way I laugh there, way up high, the way I laugh, the way I fly. And I thought, gosh, we could go around your whole life and nobody knows you and nobody really sees you. And it was the laughter. It was when he said that funny thing in this tense moment. And Jimbo, who's usually very tense, he's an intense man, he makes this comment, this what was it?
Whatever happened to stiff upper lip?
Whatever happened to stiff upper lip? And all of a sudden, I saw him in that moment. I saw him. There he was in all his glory, and we laughed, and we flew.
That was a trippy scene where Vicky virtually attacks her husband in front of the rest of the family.
It went on for a while.
Yeah.
It's not all in there.
It was part of
that
that
was
8
the 16
minutes.
minutes that.
It went
It was such a good scene. It was so weird. I loved it.
No, it was a weird
I just
know
wanted
what's
an
gonna
excuse
happen.
to
None of us knew what was
kiss
gonna
Robert
happen.
Patrick.
We're just sitting there on the couch, and all of a sudden, and then she just kept climbing on him and just making out. Hence my quandary. Hence my question.
Did I answer it?
Yeah, I've been wondering. But it's great that you create so much backstory and mystery. So it's wonderful.
There was opportunity with these human beings. I'm so glad Billy's in the world and you're in the world to write about human beings and let the story be human. And it takes time. Life is long, and it takes time and a pace to, a certain pace to access that human, and it's very rare. I don't know if I'll get the chance to do it again. I feel grateful for this one. I hope I do.
Oh, y'all go over it. Katherine, I want to ask you a question, because you were talking about the Vicky character. Why don't you tell everybody the story of how you wound up as Donna? Because I think it's such a sweet, charming story.
Well, I had gone in actually to read the Vicky role, but he had us read the Donna role. And I never told you this. So I go in and I read Donna, but I'm up for Vicky. I'm up to be cast as Vicky. And Billy's, I find out later, is being pressured to cast a movie star. I think they wanted him to cast Renee Zellweger or Jennifer Garner. Is that right?
That's true.
Yeah, okay. And so,
Can't you say this?
no, that's it. So, but I think it had been written for someone else, and they couldn't do it. And then, so the fill-ins were these other ladies that he didn't feel for different reasons were right. And so, I read the role, and I read the Donna role, and I keep thinking the meeting's over, and Billy keeps kind of talking to me, and it feels like I'm gonna get the job, like I'm leaving, but I'm thinking I'm gonna get this Vicky job. So then I hear that it's between another person and me, and then I find out that I don't. A week later, I find out that I don't get it, and I asked who got it, and it was Shawnee, and I actually knew Shawnee's work, and I thought she was such a versatile actress, and always so good doing so many different types of characters. You know, she's in what's that horror thing that you did?
Saw.
She's in Saw, but then she's in Becker, and that role on Becker, I always thought could have just been this stupid bimbo, and it was so weird and interesting the way she did it. So I just felt like, well, hell, and she's also Southern, and she's been rolling around a while. I couldn't really begrudge it. So like a week later, I was still blue about it, and I always say, I feel like I'm being an actor, you just get rejected for a living. That's your job, and like in between, you get to do a little acting, and the rest of the time, you're just getting rejected. So it's rare that 2 weeks later now, I'm just really blue. And so my son's father had recently died of cancer, and I just was in this place where it's like I couldn't be sad about anything. I was like, I am alive, I don't have cancer, and my son's okay. I was falling in love with my husband. I thought, I gotta be happy, I just gotta get a job. So I picked up the phone to call my friend who works in costumes to see if I could do costume returns on this program called Cougar Town. And and the phone rang, and it was my agent, and he said, this thing isn't dead with Billy. And I said, what? And so he tells me that, and he says he wants to talk to you about the part. And so I'm thinking, something happened, Shawnee couldn't do it, and he wants to talk to me about the Vicky part, because I'd auditioned the Donna part. So I'm looking at the script and thinking, I gotta figure out how to say something smart about Vicky when he calls me. And so, and I'm looking at it, and the agent had said the character name, and I'm like, wait a minute, he didn't say Vicky. What? I call him back, I go, what's the part, what? What's this part? He goes, no, it's Donna. He goes, I think it's a little better part. I go, that's an amazing role. That's this wonderful role. That's this amazing, amazing role. And so, and then the phone rang. Well, while I'm talking to the agent, the phone rings and it's Billy, and I was so completely spastic. And all he said was, Katherine, how'd you like to come down to Georgia and play Donna for us? And it was just like the greatest moment. And I spent like the next 4 hours on the couch calling the 5 people you would call, like over and over. And then the character says that, and then this happens, and then that. Okay, and then there's a scene. Listen to this scene. And so then this, it's like we're so irritated. They're like, you told us, Katherine. And so I was like, I need to go on a bike ride and drink a beer, and I did.
We have time for a few more questions. I see you waving frantically over here. Yes.
I was just going to say, in your 60s hairstyles, you definitely looked like Martha Heyer, if you know who she is from the 60s.
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know Martha Heyer. Who's Martha Heyer?
Yeah, she was a great blonde actress. What movies was she in? Does anyone remember? She was a great actress.
A lot of movies, some period pieces, but she was up there with Gregory Peck and a lot of big names.
I'll look her up.
H-Y-E-R, Martha Heyer. Why don't you Google her? It's just amazing how I thought of her when I was.
Oh wow.
Oh wow, look at that.
That is true. She was.
Turn it around.
Well, I don't know if you can't see this
Oh,
little
yeah.
phone, but wow, yeah. The hairdresser was really terrific and really knew the period. She would do my hair, and then every day when she was done, she'd go, I hope you win.
Catherine she said, she was going around, she said, vote for Donna, vote for Donna. And she made T-shirts for everybody that says, vote for Donna. And then there was a coup. And the makeup trailer, when they came in and they had done a T-shirt that said, vote for Vicky. I don't think Vicky ever had anybody vote for her sister Vicky.
We have time for 2 more questions, so we'll go in the very, very back in the black. Yes?
Yes, the LSD scene with Duvall, how'd that come about?
Well, you know what?
Just want to see it.
I'm a modest kind of a guy, but I had to say that was my idea. It was we were just trying to think of, well, you sit around and you think, well, what can we make happen? What can we do? I mean, you got to write a 120-page script, and it's like, well, so you come up with stuff that'd be funny. Well, it'd be funny if this happened, or it'd be funny if that happened. And it's like, okay, it's the 60s, and what can happen? And then I said, oh, I know, somebody can slip LSD in Duvall's drink. And Bill said, yeah, that'd be great. Well, who's going to do it, you know? And so we talked about different people that could do it, and we were thinking Mickey, because, you know, Mickey is Kevin Bacon's son, and he's a drug guy, but it's like, no, Alan, the real straight kid, Jimbo's son. Let Alan do it. So that's how it came about.
How did Duvall take to it? He does a great job in it. Was he excited to do that?
Duvall was real excited. He was real worried about it because, not surprisingly, because Bobby doesn't do stuff like that. He'd never taken LSD or any other kind of drug, I don't think. So he did his research on it, and you know, I mean, you know, Duvall. Duvall's an amazing, he's an amazing actor, and a lot of great stuff that he did on the LSD trip didn't make it into the movie. You know, it was the movie would be like 3 hours long if we put every great stuff, every great scene in, and you know, every great, you know, line the actor said. But Duvall was thrilled with it. He was happy. So.
Now we have time for one last question, and no pressure. This has always got to be the best question of the night, so make sure it's a doozy. In the back?
I have a production question. You guys shot in the Deep South, right?
Yeah, we shot in Georgia.
Okay. Was that during moderate temperatures? And here's why I'm asking. I've been on shoots where the cameras have failed and the people wilt, the makeup starts sliding off, the hair goes all the pot. You guys look like you never missed a beat, but of course we're seeing the finished product. So I just wonder if you guys battled weather.
Well, you guys should answer it, because I was only on the set for a week.
The first day that I was on set was the dancing scene. If you look closely, my hair is quite fallen. So they had to start putting these wefts in and then teasing them up. But they knew what to do, again, being from Alabama. And when they did these do's, which we're so lucky to have someone like that to do our hair. But do you remember when Mr. Hurt fainted during the... So Mr. Hurt fainted before he fainted. On that day, he fainted. And I remember we had to wait for him so he could come in the scene and faint. And I remember Bobby, I think he was just, they really had this great sort of camaraderie. And, you know, I don't know if it was a rivalry, there's two great actors, but it felt a little like the movie. And Bobby goes, well, God, if he just fainted, why couldn't they just put him on the stretcher? Couldn't he just be passed out? Couldn't we just be him not be on the stretcher while we do it? You know, he was like, he's got to faint. Why don't you just lie down? You know, I think he was just giving him hell. But yeah, he fainted the day that he needed to faint.
Well, we are out of time for this evening. I want to thank you all for coming out.